Hello and welcome to New Filmmakers Los Angeles in partnership with Movie Maker magazine. My name is Danny DeLillo and I'm delighted to be joined with Robert Jonathan, who's all the way from Rotterdam in the Netherlands with his fantastic film, It's Nice in Here. Let's take a look at the clip.
Do you think the sun sees it all? The light and the dark? The good and the bad?
I'm so happy to have you here and thank you for coming halfway across the world to share your film with us.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
It's amazing. As I said at the film festival and as our audience reacted to, we absolutely love your film for so many different reasons, and I'm so glad that you made it. But for those that haven't seen it, tell us a brief synopsis.
Yeah, so It's Nice in Here is a short film about an incident happening in a convenience store where a boy called Crimson gets shot. But the story is told through two different points of view, one of his best friend Imani and that of the police officer that shot him. And it's all an exploration of how stories get told about people who are no longer there to tell these stories themselves. And it's an exploration of how different people can look at the same incident but see different things out of it.
Well, I mean, we're going to go later on into your style of animation and the characters that you created because they were just exquisite and, you know, we're all just so in this story. For you personally, when was that kind of moment, you know, to develop this story, you know, obviously being, you know, one of your first animated, you know, professional films as well? And when was that kind of moment of inspiration where I have to make this film and here's the story I want to tell?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it all happened in like 2016, I think, when I was in the middle of graduating and I had to look for a story that I found interesting or something that I wanted to explore. And I had always made very personal films, but I had never made work about my cultural identity or my blackness. And I was looking at all of the characters that I was drawing, and they were always like white characters. So that was sort of like my default. And I started wondering, like, why am I not telling stories about people that look like me? So in my final year at the academy, I was really like, going to focus, or I decided to focus entirely on telling my stories or telling stories of the people that look like me. And at that same time, I saw all of these horrific shootings happening in the United States. Like we had like Philando Castile and we had like Alton Sterling as well. These innocent black men that were shot by police officers. And I was looking at how these stories were told or how these stories were also manipulated by the media and so many different sides of the same story, and I started writing and I started like trying to get my emotions down on paper, and before I knew it, that sort of like formed into a film.
I mean, you're an exquisite writer. Like the way you know, the words that you use, the characters that you created, the style in which you created it, the kind of realness, you know, we were speaking behind, like the realness that you I mean, this is an animated piece, yeah. And we're all sitting there on the edge of our seats just in shock because, you know, you're telling something that unfortunately is truth and real here in the United States and other places in America as well. In developing these characters, particularly these two best friends, it was heart-wrenching to watch because, you know, we see these people in and around us every single day, two friends, and then this horrible situation with police brutality and the statistics of what it is to particularly young black men. How did you go about creating these characters? And they were so enchanting. Even her family and everything. It was even their scene in the bath. Like everything was just so beautiful. How did you go about creating that? Because they had such a wonderful friendship.
Yeah. So the whole core of the film is about looking at this one character, Crimson, through two different lenses. So we wanted to, on one hand, very much like romanticize him, but also humanize him, mm-hmm. and on the other hand, dehumanize him and sort of like look at how a police officer would look at this kid. But when we were trying to come up with who is Crimson and who is this boy, we wanted to really lean into like vulnerable, small, intimate moments. And that's how Imani, the girl, remembers him as a vulnerable, sensitive young boy. And that's also who I was when I was growing up. Like Crimson is very much like inspired by also how I was. Like I was a very shy kid, and I was like I didn't talk a lot when I was younger. I didn't see a lot of like that representation also when I was like looking around at other films of like black young boys being shy or being quiet, you know.
Yeah, no, I mean, goodness me, for anyone who hasn't seen this film, you just created these most endearing characters, and you know, seeing the family, seeing these situations, and unfortunately, you're actually picking upon a story that is in existence as we speak, and it's heart-wrenching, it's heartbreaking. How difficult was it kind of creating this kind of police character, because you kind of humanized him in a way that was really rough to watch, because you know he'd done a brutal thing. How was that, and how did you kind of want to go about creating his side of the story as well?
That was perhaps the most difficult part of making this film, especially when we were animating his side of the story. It happened to coincide with like the murder of George Floyd at the same time, and at that time we were all the animators, we had such difficult times trying to look at the world through his lens or see it, wanting to humanize him at all. But to me, I was never really interested in creating this very easy or cartoonesque representation of a police officer, of like just like this embodiment of evil. For me, I wanted to talk more about how everyone with a gun or any police officer could do a horrific thing, like shoot a black kid. So I think that's even like a scarier thing than like having a police officer that's like racist to his very core and hates black people or something like that. Like we wanted to talk about it more in a systemic way. Like he's a police officer, and even though he has a wife and he has a kid, and we show him in a very sort of like romanticized way as well in the beginning. Ultimately, it's all of this, the accumulation of everything together that's sort of like making this horrific incident happen.
Yeah, well, you just you know told this story with such, you know, it was such an incredible experience to watch, because you really just pinpointed each and everyone's experiences so beautifully. In style of animation, like I mean, my goodness, I honestly like. I felt like a little kid again when I felt like they were so real. Like everyone was so real. Was that kind of the style you always knew you kind of wanted to go? Because is that your style, or tell us a little about how you designed? Because I mean, for those that aren't animators out there or want to get into animation, like how is that kind of? How did you know you kind of wanted to create this kind of world that you created?
Well, first of all, I felt like I had to justify the reason why it was animated at all. Because it's so much work, like it's easier not to do it, not to animate something. And we started thinking about like, okay, so what are some intrinsic properties to animation that makes it warranted that it's animated? So we were playing with minimalism and simplification, but we were also thinking about with animation, we can actually draw the same character in two different ways. And show like how differently different characters look at the world or look at the same person. So in that sense, it became a very natural process to think of it as an animation. And in terms of style, it was. I have a live action background, so we also approach the film very much as a live action film in a sense, where the shots the shots are constantly like moving a little bit, like a camera is like filming these characters almost like a documentary style, and we're using like different aspect ratios and stuff like that. So we're very much using like also the imperfections of live action in our animation to still make it feel as real and as authentic as possible.
Yeah, well, again, great, fantastic job. What, apart from like maybe some of the obvious things, what was kind of the hardest part? I mean, we know animation takes a lot of work. I'm curious, how long did it take you to make it? I know, and then what was maybe the hardest experience you had in kind of the production side of things?
Animation takes way too long.
You have to have patience. You've got a lot of patience. We know that.
Absolutely. It took us about, I think, 2 years of animating, and then it was another year of making sure that everything fell into place. So it was like, it's cleaning, it's coloring every frame. It is making sure that the background works with the foreground, and the cameras. Everything has to then also still work. So I think in total I started writing the script in 2019. We started production in 2020, and then we finished in 2022.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the timing of when you made it before, you kind of preempted quite a change of what was happening here in the United States that had been existing for a long time, but a real pivotal change.
Yeah.
That must have been quite an experience creating this story and then actually going through this big, huge, overdue experience in the United States as well.
Absolutely. It felt like life imitating art, or
Yeah.
art imitating life, and it felt very much like the story that we were telling. We saw that actually unfolding in real life, and we saw that people were coming up with their own narratives, and that's exactly what we were telling with our film as well at the time. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm still can't get over this is your first professional film that you've made, and then you get to go and premiere at Cannes Film Festival this year.
Yeah.
I wish I knew you then, because I would have loved to have seen you. And so congratulations on that. And then being in international film festivals, and then particularly bringing your film, taking it to the United States as well, being here in Los Angeles. How has that experience been for you thus far? And kind of following on from that, what do you want your audience to take from your film? So kind of two-party question.
Yeah. It feels kind of surreal being back here. I was here in 2017 doing research for this film.
Wow.
And I was talking to people, and I was taking pictures, and I was recording sounds, because I wanted to make the film feel as authentic as possible. So being here now with the completed film really feels like full circle, like we're back here, but now with like a finished product. And I don't know. I hope people will resonate with the film, and with the film we're definitely like asking questions rather than like giving concrete answers. So hopefully people will think about what we're trying to tell, and will also look at their own biases perhaps that they may have about like what do we think is true and what do we think is not true, and does it even really matter at the end of the day when actual lives get or actual people get killed. So I think hopefully it's a film that starts conversations, and we can also talk and learn and talk about the real issues that are at hand.
Well, I honestly think your film should be, in every school in the United States, and every police force United States, and every institution, workforce, everything. I mean, it's that powerful. And so you did solid research as well, coming, because I couldn't imagine it not being made by someone that didn't live the experience. And you did really great. Well, you lived an experience in the United States, but you did it so wonderfully well. What is next for you?
Next is I think I want to focus more on joy, and more on stories that are less centered around trauma, and working on this film, I realized that it's heavy. Like you wake up thinking about trauma, and you go to bed thinking about trauma, and hopefully I can work with the same crew and a team to work on something that also inspires joy and happiness, and still show Black people in beautiful, poetic, vulnerable ways.
That's beautiful. And well, listen, whether you're making films about trauma or joy, like, your storytelling is exquisite. So whatever story you tell, we'll be watching it. What is for you personally as an animator, for anyone out in our audience, anybody, animators, filmmakers? I know you're so early in your career and there's so much to look forward to, but do you have any advice you would kind of share, or things that you go by that helps you in your creative field?
Surround yourself with good people. I was very much like a perfectionist, and I was very much like a person that felt like I had to do everything by myself. And working on this project, I also learned so much to trust the people that I surrounded myself with. Working with my art director has been so crucial and has helped me so much. And picking like the animators that I wanted to work with has been, yeah, they've really exceeded my expectations. So surround yourself with good people that that trust you and that trust the story and can do things that you can't really do. And in that sense, everything will also, because animation is so intrinsically like such a long process, it's also so much more fun to work with other people and be able to count on them or have them, or vice versa.
Well, no, thank you, and thank you to all of your team that helped you made It's Nice in Here. So, well, it's lovely to have you here. Thank you for coming all this way to be here. Thank you for bringing your film, and welcome to the New Filmmakers family. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robert Jonathan.